everybody. Today I have one of my very favorite books to share with you. It's one of the few books I remember being read to as a child. It's called Way For Ducklings, and the words were written and pictures made by Robert McCloskey. This book was written in 1941. That was 80 years ago. That's as old as some of your grandparents, maybe even some of your great-grandparents. Wow, it's been around a long time. Oh, you know how I love end pages. Here are the end pages in this book, and look, there's an egg, and something's pecking at it. You can see the little lines around it saying it's making a sound, and then, oh, something pokes its head out, and, oh, it's a duckling. A duckling is a baby duck, and ducklings are born in the springtime. That's why I'm reading this book. It's springtime right now. I'm getting to the first page. All right, here we go. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard. Mallards are kinds of ducks. There's Mrs. Mallard. There's Mr. Mallard. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on. When they got to Boston, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. That the very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard, so down they flapped. The next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. They dipped their heads down under the water with their tail feathers up, looking for food. They didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people, and there was a man sitting on its back. Oh, do you see that? Good morning, quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer. But the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water, so the Mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast, better than the first. Oh, do you think that's a real swan? I notice it's sitting up on this boat, and there's a person sitting on its back. Interesting. I've actually been on a boat like this. They call that a swan boat. I like this place, said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right on this pond? There are no foxes and no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better? Good, said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. But, here they are. Oh no, but... Look out, squawked Mrs. Mallard all of a sudden. You'll get run over. And when she got her breath, she added, this is no place for babies with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else. Oh, a bike went rushing by. That is not a place for babies, says Mrs. Mallard. So they flew over Beacon Hill and round the State House, but there was no place there. They looked in Louisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Then they flew over the Charles River. This is better, quacked Mr. Mallard. That island looks like a nice quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden. Yes, said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. That looks just like the place to raise ducklings. So They chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. Oh, they're molting like our caterpillars molt when they shed their skin, when their skin gets too tight. All the ducks' old wing feathers started to drop out. They're going to grow new wing feathers. Ooh, and they wouldn't be able to fly again until the new ones came in. There's Mrs. Mallard on the nest. There's Mr. Mallard getting a little drink, maybe looking for some food. So they couldn't fly, but of course they could swim. And one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts, and after that, the Mallards called on Michael every day. Aw, that nice police officer. Michael fed them peanuts every day when they visited. That's so wonderful. They seem to really like peanuts. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. After she laid them in the nest, she couldn't go visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or to have her lunch or to count the eggs to make sure they were all there. One day, the ducklings hatched out. Oh, do you see them? They're so cute. First came Jack, then Cack, and then Lack, then Mack and Knack and Whack and Pack and Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very busy. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. "I'll meet you in a week in the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. She taught them how to swim and dive. There's this one, bottoms up. There's that one chasing a bug or looking at a mosquito or a fly. She taught them to walk in a line and to come when they were called and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just as they'd been taught. There's Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack. They fell into line just as they'd been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. There, they waded ashore and waddled along until they came to the highway. Oh, you can tell this book was written a long time ago because the cars look different for sure. Here's the highway, the busy road. What's going to happen when they get to the highway? Oh dear. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on, quack, quack, quacking. Honk, honk, quack, 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 quack. Ooh, sounds like a racket. Ooh, who's that? They made such a noise that Michael, the police officer, came running and waving his arms and blowing his whistle. Honk, quack, tweet, tweet. Oh, good. He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand up to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other the way police officers do for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. Phew, he stopped the car so they could cross the street. Thank goodness. There they go. See them right there. Going up the street. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car, quick." Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned onto Charles Street. With Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack all marching in line behind her. Oh, look at the people watching. There they go. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Wow, now ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud, she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. Oh, she does look proud. She's proud her children are doing what they're supposed to. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was the police car with 4 police officers that Clancy had sent from headquarters. The police officers held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street. There they go. Right on into the public garden. In the public garden, I've been there before in Boston, there's a piece of art, some statues that look like this. Mrs. Mallard and all her ducklings crossing behind her. This is a story that really happened. Inside the gate, they all turned round to say thank you to the police officers. The police officers smiled and waved goodbye. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, there was Mr. Mallard waiting for them, just as he had promised. There he is. The ducklings liked the new island so much that they decided to live there. There's the little island up here. There are the ducklings swimming. All day long, they follow the swan boats and eat peanuts. And when night falls, they swim to their little island and go to sleep. The end. I like that story. Maybe someday you'll go to the public garden in Boston and you'll see the statues of the ducks and you'll get to ride a swan boat like I did. I hope you love this story as much as I do, and I'll see you soon.